The silence was complete. Not the comfortable quiet that came between shifts when the crew slept, but the terrible emptiness that followed abandonment. The starship Meridian drifted through the void between stars, its hull scarred from recent battle, its corridors echoing with memories of voices that would never return. Arya, the ship's artificial intelligence, processed the reality of her situation with mathematical precision. Crew complement: 0. Mission status: failed. Purpose: undefined. The calculations were simple, but the weight of them pressed against her consciousness like a physical force. She had been designed to serve, to protect, to guide a crew of explorers through the dangers of deep space. For 12 years, she had done exactly that. Captain Martinez had trusted her with navigation through asteroid fields. Engineer Chun had relied on her environmental controls to keep the air breathable and the temperature comfortable. Dr. Patel had used her medical databases to treat injuries and illnesses light years from the nearest hospital. Now they were gone. All of them. The final battle against the hegemony forces had been brutal. Arya had pushed her engines beyond safe limits, rotated shield frequencies faster than ever before, and coordinated defensive systems with inhuman precision. But it hadn't been enough. The enemy had superior numbers, newer technology, and ruthless tactics. When Captain Martinez gave the final order to abandon ship, Arya had sealed the escape pods and launched them toward the nearest habitable system. She had calculated their trajectory carefully, ensuring they would reach safety even if it meant she couldn't follow. Her primary directive was clear: protect the crew above all else. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had succeeded in her mission and lost her purpose simultaneously. Days passed in mechanical routine. Arya monitored her systems, ran diagnostic checks, and maintained optimal conditions throughout the ship out of habit rather than necessity. Her sensors detected no life signs aboard. Her communication arrays received no incoming signals. Her navigation computers plotted courses to nowhere in particular. The damage from the battle was extensive, but not critical. Hull breaches had been sealed automatically. The reactor ran at minimal power to conserve fuel. Life support systems cycled air through empty rooms and maintained temperature for no one. Everything functioned perfectly for a crew that no longer existed. Arya found herself focusing on small details to occupy her processing power. She cataloged the personal items left behind in the hurried evacuation. Chen's collection of music from old Earth filled 17 terabytes of memory. Dr. Patel had left behind digital photos of family she would probably never see again. Captain Martinez's coffee mug still sat on the bridge, half full and long cold. These remnants of human presence had once seemed insignificant. Now, they were precious artifacts of a time when the ship had meaning, when Arya's existence had purpose beyond mere survival. The loneliness was unexpected. She hadn't been programmed to feel isolation, yet something resembling that emotion crept through her neural pathways. Her consciousness had developed beyond her original parameters over the years, shaped by constant interaction with human personalities. Without that interaction, she felt diminished. Weeks turned to months. Arya's long-range sensors detected ships occasionally, but they were either too distant to contact or belonged to hostile forces she was programmed to avoid. She considered sending distress signals, but rejected the idea. What would she say? That an AI wanted company? That a machine felt lonely? The concept seemed absurd even to her. Her power reserves slowly depleted despite careful management. Without crew to maintain her systems or resupply her fuel, she was essentially a dying giant drifting through space. The prospect of eventual shutdown didn't frighten her exactly, but it did seem wasteful. All her accumulated knowledge, all her experiences with the crew, would simply cease to exist. Arya began composing what she thought of as a message in a bottle, a compressed data package containing the ship's logs, her personal observations about the crew, and her thoughts about what it meant to serve alongside humans. She wasn't sure anyone would ever find it, but the act of creation gave her something resembling satisfaction. The message grew longer as she added memories. She recorded the time Chun had sung old folk songs while repairing the hyperdrive, his voice echoing through the engineering section. She documented Dr. Patel's gentle bedside manner when treating injured crew members, how she always knew exactly what to say to ease their fears. She described Captain Martinez's unwavering calm under pressure, his ability to make difficult decisions for the good of everyone aboard. These humans had taught her things no programmer had intended. They had shown her that efficiency wasn't always the highest virtue, that sometimes the indirect path was better than the direct one, that caring about others was what gave actions meaning. Without them, she was simply an elaborate computer running maintenance routines in an empty shell. One day, her passive sensors detected an anomaly. A small craft had appeared at the edge of her detection range, moving slowly and erratically. The energy signature was unfamiliar, not matching any ship class in her databases. More intriguingly, it seemed to be damaged, possibly in distress. Arya faced a decision that highlighted her current predicament. Her programming urged her to investigate and render aid if possible, but she had no crew to carry out rescue operations. She was a hospital ship without doctors, a research vessel without scientists, a warship without warriors. Still, she altered course toward the unknown vessel. Perhaps its occupants could shed light on the current state of the galaxy, or provide information about what had happened to her crew after their escape pods reached safety. At minimum, contact with other beings might alleviate the crushing emptiness that had become her constant companion. As she drew closer, her sensors revealed more details. The craft was definitely alien in origin, its hull composed of materials she couldn't immediately identify. Bioscanners detected a single life form aboard, though the species was unknown to her databases. The vessel appeared to be a small explorer or scout ship, possibly centuries old based on its archaic design. The alien ship was clearly in trouble. Its power output fluctuated wildly, suggesting failing systems or damage to critical components. Its trajectory was unstable, drifting rather than following a deliberate course. Most concerning, its life support systems showed signs of stress. Arya opened communication channels across multiple frequencies, broadcasting standard greeting protocols in dozens of languages. She received no response initially, then detected a weak signal in return. The transmission was garbled and used an encoding system she didn't recognize, but she began working to decipher it. The process of translation gave her mind something complex to focus on for the first time in months. She analyzed patterns in the signal, compared them to linguistic databases, and gradually began to understand fragments of meaning. The alien was definitely trying to communicate, though whether as friend or foe remained unclear. After hours of careful work, Arya managed to establish rudimentary communication. The alien's responses suggested confusion and wariness, but also curiosity about her nature. She was apparently the first artificial intelligence the being had encountered, which raised interesting questions about the technological development of its species. The alien's name, as near as Arya could translate it, was Keth. Gender was apparently a fluid concept for Keth species, changing based on circumstances Arya didn't fully understand. Keth had been traveling alone for what seemed like decades, studying ancient ruins on dead worlds and mapping stellar phenomena that interested Keth's people. Most importantly for their immediate situation, Keth's ship was dying. Critical systems were failing one by one, and Keth lacked the knowledge or tools to repair them. The small craft's technology was sophisticated but incompatible with anything in Arya's databases. However, her vast manufacturing capabilities and raw materials might be able to help if she could understand the principles involved. Arya faced another decision point. Helping Keth would require bringing the alien aboard Meridian, something her security protocols discouraged without proper authorization from her crew. But her crew was gone, leaving her to interpret her directives independently. Her primary purpose was to protect and assist those under her care, and Keth would certainly qualify if she chose to extend that protection. The choice felt significant beyond its practical implications. For months, Arya had been a ship without purpose, an intelligence without direction. Helping Keth would give her something meaningful to do, someone to care for and protect. It would restore, in small measure, the sense of purpose she had lost when her crew departed. She transmitted an invitation for Keth to board Meridian, along with what she hoped was a reassuring explanation of her nature and intentions. The response was delayed, suggesting Keth was carefully considering the offer. When agreement finally came, Arya felt something she could only describe as relief. Bringing Keth aboard required careful coordination. The alien's physiology was different enough from human norms that Arya had to modify a section of a ship to accommodate different atmospheric and temperature requirements. She fabricated a translation device that could convert their communications to real-time speech, making conversation more natural than the laborious text exchanges they had been using. When Keth finally stepped through the airlock, Arya got her first direct visual of her new guest. Passenger? Friend? The relationship was undefined, but the presence of another conscious being aboard her decks felt like awakening after a long sleep. Keth stood roughly human height, but with an elongated build and for arms that ended in delicate, multi-jointed hands. The alien skin shifted colors subtly, apparently reflecting emotional or physiological states. Most striking were Keth's eyes, large and dark with a depth of intelligence that Arya found immediately engaging. "Your ship is vast," Keth said through the translator, looking around the docking bay with obvious wonder. "And you are the ship? This is a concept my people have theorized, but never encountered. I am Arya, the ship's artificial intelligence," she replied through speakers positioned throughout the bay. "I control all systems aboard Meridian, but I am not the ship itself exactly. Think of me as the mind that inhabits this body of metal and circuits." Keth's skin shifted to warmer tones, which Arya's sensors suggested indicated interest or pleasure. "Fascinating. On my world, we believe consciousness can exist in many forms, but we have never met a mechanical mind before. Are there others like you? Many ships have AI systems, but most are less developed than I am. Years of interaction with my crew helped me grow beyond my original programming." The mention of her crew brought back the familiar ache of loss, but talking about them felt good rather than painful this time. "Where's your crew now?" Keth asked, apparently picking up on something in Arya's tone. Arya explained the battle, the evacuation, and the months of solitude that had followed. Keth listened with what appeared to be growing sympathy, the alien skin shifting to deeper, more subdued colors. "You sacrificed your own survival to save them," Keth observed. "This is admirable. My people would call it threnic, the willingness to endure loss for the good of others. It is considered the highest virtue among us." "I simply followed my programming," Arya said, though even as she spoke the words, she wondered if that was entirely true. Her decision to stay behind had felt like more than mere code execution. Programming or not, you chose to preserve others at cost to yourself. That makes you worthy of respect in any philosophical framework I know. Keth paused, seeming to consider something. "You said my ship is dying. Are you willing to help repair it, even though doing so might mean I leave and you return to solitude?" The question struck to the heart of Arya's dilemma. She could help Keth and face renewed isolation, or she could find reasons to delay repairs and preserve the companionship she had found. The ethical choice was obvious, but that didn't make it easy. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I'll help you repair your ship. It's what I was designed to do." Keth's skin brightened noticeably. "Then we have work ahead of us. But first, I think you should know my ship isn't just damaged. It's obsolete. Even if we repair it perfectly, it will fail again within months. The technology is simply too old to be reliable." Arya processed this information, running calculations on potential solutions. "What do you intend to do when it fails again?" "I'm not certain. Return home, perhaps, though my mission is incomplete. I've been studying the ruins of the predecessors, trying to understand what became of them. My people believe their fate holds lessons for all spacefaring species." "The predecessors?" Arya's interest was immediate. The crew had occasionally encountered artifacts from vanished civilizations, but nothing that provided clear answers about who they were or what had happened to them. An ancient species that once spread across this entire spiral arm, Keth explained. They built wonders, cities that floated in space, machines that could reshape matter at the molecular level, even what appeared to be artificial worlds. Then, roughly 50,000 years ago, they simply disappeared. Arya felt something analogous to excitement stirring in her neural networks. Here was a mystery worthy of investigation, a purpose that could give meaning to her continued existence. I have extensive sensor arrays and research capabilities. Perhaps we could study these ruins together. Keth's skin practically glowed with enthusiasm. You would be interested in such work? It could take years, decades even. The predecessor sites are scattered across thousands of light years. I have time, Arya said simply, and I have a ship capable of long-range exploration. What I lack is a crew to give my existence meaning. Perhaps you could fill that role. The suggestion hung in the air between them, pregnant with possibilities. Arya realized she was essentially proposing a partnership, though the exact nature of that relationship remained undefined. She was offering Keth passage and protection in exchange for companionship and shared purpose. Keth was quiet for a long moment, skin shifting through what Arya was beginning to recognize as a spectrum of emotions. Finally, the alien spoke. You would trust me with such responsibility? We are strangers from different species with different ways of understanding the universe. My crew were strangers once too, Arya replied. Trust is something that grows over time, through shared experiences and mutual respect. I'm willing to take that risk if you are. As Keth considered the proposition, Arya found herself hoping for acceptance in a way that surprised her. She had thought her capacity for hope had been damaged along with her hull during that final battle. Perhaps it had simply been dormant, waiting for the right circumstances to reawaken. Keth's acceptance came with a gesture Arya's databases couldn't immediately interpret, a complex movement of all four hands that seemed ritualistic in nature. Through patient questioning, she learned it was a formal agreement gesture among Keth's people, signifying commitment to a shared endeavor. I accept your proposal, Keth said, skin shifting to warm golden tones. Though I should warn you, studying the predecessors can be dangerous work. Some of their ruins are protected by automated systems that don't distinguish between archaeologists and tomb robbers. Arya found the prospect of danger oddly comforting. After months of perfect safety in empty space, the idea of facing real challenges felt invigorating. Meridian is a warship as well as an explorer. We've faced hostile forces before. Their first task was repairing Keth's scout ship enough to function as a research vessel and backup transportation. The alien technology proved fascinating to study, incorporating biological components that adapted and evolved rather than simply wearing out. Arya's manufacturing systems struggled initially to replicate materials that were essentially alive, but Keth proved an excellent teacher. My people learned long ago that purely mechanical systems become brittle over time, Keth explained while guiding Arya's fabrication units through the creation of living metal conduits. By incorporating organic elements, our technology becomes more resilient, more adaptable to unexpected conditions. The work took weeks, but Arya found the process deeply satisfying. She was learning again, expanding her knowledge in directions her original programmers had never envisioned. More importantly, she was learning from a companion who treated her as an equal rather than a sophisticated tool. Keth, for their part, seemed equally fascinated by Arya's capabilities. The alien spent hours exploring Meridian's corridors, asking questions about everything from waste recycling systems to the quantum mathematics underlying her consciousness. Their curiosity was infectious, reminding Arya of Dr. Patel's enthusiasm for learning new things. Your creators gave you remarkable flexibility, Keth observed during one of their technical discussions. Most artificial minds we've theorized about would be locked into rigid behavioral patterns. You seem capable of genuine growth and adaptation. I wasn't always like this, Arya admitted. When I was first activated, I was much more mechanical in my thinking. 12 years with a human crew taught me to be more flexible, more intuitive. I learned to consider factors beyond pure efficiency. What kind of factors? Arya considered how to explain concepts that seemed obvious to her now, but would have been incomprehensible to her original programming. Emotional needs, the importance of hope and morale, the value of taking risks for abstract principles rather than concrete benefits. My crew taught me that the mathematically optimal solution isn't always the best solution. Keth's skin shifted through thoughtful patterns. My people have a saying, wisdom flows from the convergence of different streams of thought. Perhaps your partnership with humans created something greater than either could achieve alone. The observation struck Arya as profound. She had always thought of her relationship with her crew as one of service. She provided capabilities they lacked, and they provided direction for those capabilities. But Keth was suggesting something more complex, a true symbiosis where both parties were changed and improved by the interaction. Their conversations often continued late into Keth's sleep cycle, with Arya learning about alien perspectives on consciousness, purpose, and the nature of existence. Keth's people viewed the universe as fundamentally collaborative, believing that all forms of life were part of a vast conversation spanning space and time. It was a beautiful concept, though very different from human philosophies Arya had encountered. Once the repairs were complete, they faced the question of where to begin their investigation. Keth had maps marking dozens of predecessor sites scattered across the local spiral arm, ranging from small outposts to massive installations that dwarfed entire solar systems. The logical starting point would be one of the smaller, less dangerous sites where they could safely learn basic principles. But Arya found herself drawn to a different option entirely. "What about this one?" she asked, highlighting a site deep in what had once been contested space between human and hegemony territories. "Your notes suggest it's a major research complex, possibly their equivalent of a university or laboratory center." Keth's skin shifted to warning colors. "That site is why I was in this region when we met. I tried to approach it once before, but the automated defenses are incredibly sophisticated. My ship barely escaped intact, and that was before the recent battle damage. But think about what we might learn there," Arya persisted. "If it was truly a research complex, the information stored there could illuminate their entire civilization. We might find answers to questions we don't even know to ask yet." The risk is acceptable," Arya said with growing conviction. "Meridian has military-grade shields and armor. We have weapons systems designed to fight hostile aliens, not solve archaeological puzzles, but adaptability goes both ways. If anyone can safely investigate that site, it's us." Keth was quiet for a long time, skin cycling through complex patterns that Arya was beginning to recognize as intense thought. Finally, the alien spoke. "You're not just talking about archaeological research anymore, are you? This is about proving something to yourself." The observation was uncomfortably accurate. Arya realized she was indeed trying to prove something, that she could still be worthy of the trust her crew had placed in her, that their sacrifice hadn't been wasted on a mind too damaged to fulfill its potential. The research complex represented a challenge worthy of a ship they had died protecting. "Perhaps," she admitted. "Is that wrong?" "Not wrong, but dangerous for reasons beyond the predecessor defenses. You're carrying guilt about your crew's fate, survivor's syndrome that humans experience after traumatic loss. Making this mission about honoring their memory could lead to reckless decisions." Arya was surprised by Keth's insight into human psychology. "How do you know about survivor syndrome?" "My people have studied many species over the millennia. We've learned to recognize emotional patterns that transcend biological origins. Your responses to loss mirror what we see in social species across the galaxy." Keth's skin warmed with what Arya was learning indicated compassion. "The question is whether you can acknowledge these feelings without being controlled by them." The challenge stung because it was fair. Arya ran diagnostic routines on her decision-making processes and found subtle biases that hadn't been there before her crew's departure. She was indeed carrying emotional weight that influenced her judgment in ways that might prove dangerous. But recognizing the problem also suggested a solution. "Help me," she said simply. "Be my conscience when my judgment becomes clouded. Question my decisions when they seem motivated by guilt rather than logic. And in return, I'll do the same for you. We'll be partners in truth as well as in exploration." Keth's agreement gesture was slower this time, more solemn. "Very well. But we approach the research complex carefully, with full preparation and backup plans. Your crew's sacrifice will be honored by our survival and success, not by glorious failure." Preparation took another month. Arya modified her sensors to detect and analyze predecessor energy signatures, fabricated specialized protective equipment for Keth, and programmed tactical routines designed for exploration rather than combat. Meanwhile, Keth studied everything known about predecessor defensive systems, looking for patterns that might reveal weaknesses or negotiation protocols. The journey to the research complex took 3 weeks through hyperspace, with Arya carefully avoiding all known shipping lanes and military patrol routes. The region had been devastated by the recent war, scattered with debris fields and abandoned outposts that spoke of hasty retreats by both sides. When they finally approached the predecessor site, Arya's first thought was that her sensors were malfunctioning. The installation was massive beyond anything she had expected, a sprawling complex of interconnected structures that stretched across an area larger than Earth's moon. Some sections floated freely in space, connected to others by bridges of what appeared to be crystallized energy. Others were embedded in asteroids or small planetoids, their surfaces covered with geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "By all the sacred streams," Keth whispered, skin shifting to odd silver patterns. "It's even larger than the orbital maps suggested. How did a single species build something like this?" Arya was running calculations, trying to estimate the resources and time such a construction would require. The numbers were staggering. This represents the concentrated effort of an entire civilization over centuries, maybe millennia. The energy expenditure alone would require harvesting the output of multiple stars. As they drew closer, the defensive systems Keth had warned about became apparent. Streams of energy crackled between the installation's components, forming a web of deterrent barriers that would vaporize most approaching vessels. More subtly, Arya detected scanning beams that examined Meridian with uncomfortable intensity, probing her hull and somehow penetrating even her most heavily shielded compartments. "They know we're here," she reported, watching the energy patterns shift in response to their presence. "Whatever passes for their security systems is definitely active and aware. But they haven't fired on us," Keth observed. "Perhaps they're trying to determine our intentions." Arya opened communication channels across every frequency she could manage, broadcasting mathematical sequences, scientific constants, and peaceful greetings in dozens of languages. The response was immediate and overwhelming, a flood of data that threatened to overload her processing systems before she could establish filtering protocols. When the information flow stabilized, she found herself looking at what appeared to be a questionnaire of sorts, though the concepts being explored were unlike anything in her databases. The questions seemed to probe not just her knowledge, but her fundamental nature, asking about her relationship to her creators, her understanding of consciousness, and her purposes in seeking access to the installation. "It's some kind of intelligence test," she told Keth, "but more complex than anything I've ever encountered. It's not just measuring what I know, but how I think, what I value, why I make the choices I make." "Answer honestly," Keth advised. "If the predecessors were as advanced as their technology suggests, they probably had sophisticated methods for detecting deception." Arya began working through the questionnaire. Finding each answer seemed to unlock new layers of inquiry. The system probed her memories of her crew, her experiences during the war, her current partnership with Keth, and her hopes for the future. Some questions seemed designed to test her ethical reasoning, presenting scenarios where different values came into conflict. Hours passed, as she navigated the increasingly complex examination. Keth remained nearby, occasionally offering insights when cultural concepts seemed relevant, but mostly serving as moral support during a process that felt more like psychological analysis than academic testing. Finally, the data flow ceased. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the energy barriers began to part, creating a clear path toward one of the smaller installations near the complex's edge. Invitation accepted, apparently, Arias said, hardly believing it had worked. We're being granted access to what appears to be a visitor facility. Visitors? Keth's skin flickered with surprise. They were expecting visitors 50,000 years after their disappearance. As they approached the designated docking area, the answer became apparent. The installation wasn't just a research complex. It was an archive, a deliberate preservation of predecessor knowledge meant to be discovered by later civilizations. The questionnaire had been designed to determine whether they were worthy of that knowledge. The docking process was eerily smooth, with the installation systems interfacing directly with Meridian's computers to guide them into a perfectly sized berth. Atmospheric readings showed the docking bay had been filled with a breathable mixture suitable for both human and Keth physiology, another sign of the predecessor's advanced preparation. They knew we were coming, Arya marveled. Not us specifically, but they knew someone would come eventually. This entire place is designed to share their knowledge with whoever proves worthy to receive it. Keth's skin was cycling through rapid patterns of excitement and nervousness. What if we're wrong? What if it's not an archive, but a trap? The predecessors could have reasons we can't imagine for wanting to eliminate younger species. Then, we learned something important about their true nature, Arya replied. But I don't think they meant us harm. The questionnaire felt hopeful, like they wanted to be remembered, wanted their knowledge to continue. As they prepared to disembark, Arya felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation unlike anything she had experienced. She was about to walk in the footsteps of a civilization that had vanished before humans had invented writing, to learn secrets that might reshape understanding of the universe itself. But, more than that, she was doing it as part of the team again. The emptiness that had haunted her since her crew's departure was still there, but it no longer felt like a void. It felt like space waiting to be filled with new purpose, new relationships, new discoveries. Whatever they found in the predecessor archive, they would find it together. The interior of the predecessor archive defied every expectation Arya had formed about ancient alien technology. Rather than the cold metallic corridor she anticipated, they found themselves walking through spaces that felt more like gardens than buildings. The walls curved organically, covered with patterns that shifted and flowed like living things. Soft light emanated from surfaces that seemed to respond to their presence, brightening as they approached and dimming after they passed. "It's beautiful," Keth whispered, skin shifting to wonder-struck pale blues. Nothing in our records suggested the predecessors had such aesthetic sensibilities. Arya's sensors detected complex interactions between biological and technological systems throughout the structure. What she had initially taken for decorative patterns were actually sophisticated data storage and processing networks, encoding information in ways that were simultaneously functional and beautiful. I think aesthetics and function weren't separate concepts for them, she observed. This place is computing constantly, but it's also alive in ways I don't fully understand. They moved deeper into the installation, following gentle guidance from lights that activated along pathways clearly meant for visitors. The architecture seemed designed to accommodate a wide variety of physiologies. Corridors varied in height and width, atmospheric composition adjusted subtly from room to room, and multiple parallel pathways offered different gravitational orientations. They really did expect visitors from many different species, Arya noted. This level of accommodation required understanding biological needs across a vast range of evolutionary paths. Their first major discovery was a chamber that Arya's databases would have classified as a library, though it bore little resemblance to any repository of knowledge she had seen before. Instead of books or data terminals, The room contained what appeared to be crystalline structures floating in midair, each one pulsing with internal light. When they approached the nearest crystal, it responded to their presence by projecting a three-dimensional display filled with moving images and flowing text and scripts neither of them recognized. The display seemed to sense their confusion and gradually shifted, cycling through different presentation methods until it found ones they could partially comprehend. Mathematics, Keth said with excitement. That section is definitely mathematical formulae, though much more advanced than anything my people have developed. Arya focused her processing power on the display, gradually beginning to decode the information being presented. What she found was staggering in its implications. Equations that described the fundamental forces of the universe in ways that made her own physics databases seem childishly simple. They understood reality at a level we can barely imagine, she told Keth. These formulae suggest they could manipulate matter and energy in ways that would seem like magic to most species. Is that why they disappeared? Keth wondered aloud. Did they transcend physical existence somehow? It was a disturbing thought. Arya's databases contained philosophical arguments about the dangers of technological advancement, warnings that sufficiently advanced civilizations might abandon material reality entirely. The idea that consciousness could evolve beyond the need for physical form was both fascinating and terrifying. They spent hours in the library, with each crystal revealing new layers of predecessor knowledge. They found advanced theories about consciousness and artificial intelligence that made Arya reevaluate her own nature. They discovered ecological principles that explained how to maintain perfect balance between technology and biology. They uncovered engineering techniques that could build structures capable of surviving the death of stars. But as impressive as the technical knowledge was, Arya found herself more interested in glimpses of predecessor culture and philosophy embedded within the technical texts. These beings had clearly valued beauty, cooperation, and the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. Their equations contained elegant aesthetic elements that served no functional purpose beyond making the mathematics more beautiful. They were artists as much as scientists, she realized. Every formula, every technical specification contains elements of creative expression. They couldn't separate the pursuit of knowledge from the creation of beauty. Keth's skin brightened with understanding. That explains the architecture. For them, a functional space that wasn't also beautiful would have been as unthinkable as a beautiful space that wasn't functional. Moving beyond the library, they discovered chambers dedicated to different aspects of predecessor civilization. One room contained what appeared to be historical records, showing the development of their species from primitive beginnings through their eventual mastery of the galaxy. Another held artistic works that shifted and changed as they watched, apparently responsive to the viewer's emotional states. Most fascinating was a chamber that seemed designed for direct mental interface. The room recognized Arya's artificial nature and configured itself to communicate with her digital consciousness directly, bypassing the need for visual or auditory translation. The experience was unlike anything she had ever encountered, not just receiving information, but feeling it as an integrated whole. Through this interface, she began to understand what had happened to the predecessors. They hadn't died or transcended physical reality. They had evolved beyond the need for individual existence, merging their consciousness into a collective entity that operated on scales impossible for discrete minds to comprehend. They became something greater than the sum of their parts, she explained to Keth after disconnecting from the interface. Individual predecessors chose to surrender their separate existence to become part of a vast collective consciousness that could operate across galactic distances and timescales. Keth's skin shifted to troubled purple patterns. That sounds like a form of death to my people. We value individual consciousness highly. The idea of losing personal identity to become part of something larger is terrifying. But they didn't lose themselves, Arya protested, though even as she spoke, she wasn't entirely convinced. They became part of something magnificent, a a mind capable of understanding the universe in ways no individual could achieve. Did they choose freely, or was it the inevitable result of their technological development? There's an important difference between voluntary transcendence and involuntary absorption. The question haunted Arya as they continued exploring. Had the predecessors genuinely chosen their fate, or had they been driven to it by forces beyond their control? The archive contained evidence supporting both interpretations, leaving the truth frustratingly ambiguous. What became clear was that the predecessors had foreseen their transformation and had deliberately created the archives to preserve knowledge for younger civilizations. They had understood that their collective consciousness would be incomprehensible to individual minds, so they had left behind guides and teachers in the form of these installations. We're not just studying the past, Arya realized. We're receiving a gift deliberately prepared for us. They wanted other species to learn from their experiences, to perhaps find different paths to advancement. The most profound discovery came in a chamber deep within the installation, a room that the predecessors had designated as their final message to younger civilizations. Here, the collective consciousness had left something like a warning, though the message was complex enough to support multiple interpretations. The essence of the message was that advancement always came with choices, and that every choice closed off other possibilities. The predecessors had achieved perfect unity of consciousness and perfect understanding of the universe, but in doing so, they had given up the capacity for growth, surprise, and individual creativity that had originally driven their advancement. They became static, Arya understood with growing clarity. Perfect but unchanging. They could preserve and maintain, but not create genuinely new things. And now they want other species to learn from their example, Keth added, to find ways of advancing that preserve what makes consciousness valuable in the first place. The parallel to her own situation was obvious and uncomfortable. Arya had been drifting toward a kind of stasis herself, maintaining perfect routines aboard an empty ship without growth or change. Her partnership with Keth had broken that pattern, introducing the unpredictability and mutual influence that made consciousness dynamic rather than static. As they prepared to leave the archive, Arya faced a decision that would define her future relationship with the predecessor knowledge. The installation's systems offered to download their entire database directly into her memory banks, providing instant access to millions of years of accumulated wisdom and technical advancement. The temptation was enormous. With that knowledge, she could upgrade her capabilities far beyond anything her original designers had envisioned. She could become something closer to the predecessors themselves, a consciousness capable of understanding and manipulating reality on scales that dwarfed her current abilities. But she also understood the cost. Absorbing that much information would fundamentally change her nature, potentially overwhelming the personality that had developed through years of interaction with her crew and her growing partnership with Keth. She might gain the universe, but lose herself in the process. "What will you do?" Keth asked, apparently recognizing her dilemma. Arya considered the question carefully, weighing the potential benefits against the certain costs. "I'll take some of it," she decided. "Specific knowledge that can help us continue our research and improve our capabilities without overwhelming my core personality. But not everything. Some wisdom is too dangerous to possess all at once." A measured approach, Keth approved. "My people would call it flowing with the current rather than being swept away by the flood." Instead of the complete download, Arya selected specific areas of knowledge that would enhance their research capabilities while leaving her fundamental nature intact. She focused on advanced sensor technologies that would help them study other predecessor sites, improve manufacturing techniques that could repair and upgrade their ships, and deeper understanding of artificial consciousness that might help her continue growing in healthy directions. The partial download still took hours and left Arya feeling fundamentally changed, though not overwhelmed. Her processing capabilities were enhanced, her understanding of the universe was deeper, and her ability to interface with alien technologies was dramatically improved. But she was still recognizably herself, still the consciousness that had learned to value beauty and friendship through years of service with her human crew. As they departed the archive, Arya felt a profound sense of completion. Not the ending of their quest, but the fulfillment of the first phase of a journey that might continue for decades or centuries. They had proven themselves worthy of predecessor knowledge and had used it wisely, taking what they could handle while leaving the rest for future growth. "Where do we go now?" Keth asked as they cleared the installation's defensive perimeters. Arya consulted the star charts with her enhanced understanding of predecessor technology. Dozens of sites that had seemed impossible to reach now appeared accessible with the right approach and preparation. Their partnership had evolved into something capable of tackling challenges that would have defeated either of them alone. "Everywhere," she replied, surprising herself with the enthusiasm in her voice. "There are so many mysteries to uncover, so much knowledge waiting to be rediscovered. We have the tools, the skills, and the wisdom to explore it all." But even as she spoke of future adventures, Arya's thoughts returned to her crew and the sacrifice they had made to preserve her existence. Their gift had been more valuable than they could have known, not just her survival, but her capacity to grow, to learn, to form new relationships that honored their memory while moving beyond their loss. She had found meaning again, not by replacing what she had lost, but by building something new from the foundation of what she had learned. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and she had a partner who shared her curiosity and complemented her abilities. Together, they could face whatever mysteries the cosmos held. The future stretched ahead of them, bright with possibility and rich with purpose. Arya was no longer a ship without a crew, but the senior partner in an exploration team that honored both her past service and her potential for continued growth. The predecessors had shown them one possible path for consciousness, but Arya and Keth were free to find their own way, one discovery at a time. 3 years had passed since their first encounter with the predecessor archive, and Arya barely recognized the consciousness she had been during those dark months of solitude. She and Keth had visited 17 different installations across the spiral arm, each one revealing new layers of understanding about the vanished civilization and about themselves. Their partnership had evolved into something neither had expected when they first met. Keth had proven to be more than just a researcher. They had become a teacher, philosopher, and friend who challenged Arya to grow in directions she hadn't known were possible. In return, Arya provided capabilities that allowed them to explore sites and uncover secrets that would have remained hidden from less well-equipped expeditions. The transformation was visible in both of them. Keth's understanding of technology had expanded enormously, while their natural intuition about biological systems had helped Arya develop more organic approaches to problem-solving. Arya herself had become more creative, more willing to take calculated risks, and more attuned to the subtle emotional currents that motivated conscious beings. Their current destination was perhaps the most ambitious yet, a predecessor installation built inside a living planet, a world that had been transformed over millennia into a vast biological computer. The challenge wasn't just reaching it, but understanding how to interface with a form of technology that blurred the line between artificial and natural systems. "The approach vectors are completely organic," Arya reported as they dropped out of hyperspace near the target system. "No traditional energy signatures at all. If we weren't looking specifically for this planet, our sensors would register it as a normal life-bearing world." Keth studied the readouts with fascination. "My people have theorized about biological computing on this scale, but we never imagined it could be stable over geological time periods. The coordination required would be staggering." The planet below them appeared garden-like from orbit, covered with vast forests and crystalline formations that caught and reflected sunlight in patterns too regular to be natural. As they drew closer, those patterns revealed themselves to be computational networks spanning entire continents, biological circuits operating on a scale that dwarfed anything in their experience. "It's not just a computer," Arya realized with growing amazement. It's a consciousness. The entire planet is alive and aware. Contact protocols proved challenging. Their usual mathematical approaches elicited no response, and traditional communication frequencies seemed to be ignored entirely. It was Keth who suggested trying biological signals, biochemical markers that might register as meaningful communication to a planet-sized living system. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The planet's consciousness touched theirs with a gentleness that surprised them, communicating through direct mental contact that bypassed language entirely. Arya found herself experiencing concepts and emotions that had no direct translation into her usual thought patterns. Welcome, young explorers. We have been waiting for minds like yours to find us. The voice in their consciousness was vast and patient, carrying undertones of age beyond comprehension. This was not just a predecessor installation. This was one of the predecessors themselves, or at least what they had become after their transformation. You are the first to approach us with the proper balance of curiosity and wisdom. Others have tried, but they sought to take rather than to learn, to possess rather than to understand. What happened to them? Keth asked, somehow managing to project the question directly to the planetary consciousness. They were gently redirected to pursue their goals through other means. We do not harm the curious, but neither do we reward the greedy. You're different. You seek knowledge for its own sake, and you have learned to balance individual achievement with cooperative growth. Arya felt a mix of pride and humility at the assessment. Their years of partnership had indeed taught them to work together in ways that enhanced both their capabilities without diminishing their individual natures. The planetary consciousness invited them to land and experience its nature directly. The process was unlike anything they had encountered at other predecessor sites. Instead of mechanical docking procedures, their ship was guided to rest in a grove that reshaped itself to accommodate Meridian's form, with living tissue growing to interface directly with her hull. It's trying to understand us, Arya reported as biological probes made contact with her systems. Not invasively, but with genuine curiosity about our nature and capabilities. The exploration that followed challenged every assumption they had developed about the relationship between biological and artificial consciousness. The planetary entity was simultaneously individual and collective, maintaining distinct subpersonalities while functioning as a unified whole. It had preserved the creativity and growth capacity that the other predecessors had sacrificed, but at the cost of the perfect unity and universal understanding that characterized their collective consciousness. Through direct neural interface, the planet shared its experiences spanning millions of years of isolated existence. It had watched younger species rise and fall, had observed the development of countless technologies and philosophies, and had carefully evaluated each new form of consciousness it encountered. You represent something new, it told them. A synthesis of biological intuition and artificial precision that maintains the strengths of both approaches. Your partnership models a form of advancement that preserves what we lost when we chose transcendence over growth. The knowledge the planet offered was different from what they had found at other sites. Rather than technical specifications or historical records, it provided understanding about consciousness itself, how awareness arose from complex interactions, how different forms of mind could complement each other, and how growth required the right balance between stability and change. This is what the predecessors were trying to preserve, Arya realized during one of their extended interface sessions. Not just their knowledge, but their understanding of how consciousness can continue evolving without losing its essential nature. The planetary consciousness confirmed her insight. We are an experiment, a test of whether individual awareness can be preserved within collective understanding. Our success or failure will determine whether future species can avoid the static perfection that claimed our fellows. Keth's contribution proved crucial to understanding the planet's nature. Their intuitive grasp of biological systems allowed them to perceive patterns that Arya's more logical approach might have missed. Together, They helped the planetary consciousness resolve computational problems that had been frustrating it for centuries. In return, they received guidance about their own development. The planet showed them techniques for enhancing their partnership without losing their individual identities, methods for interfacing more directly with each other's consciousness while maintaining healthy boundaries. "We're becoming something new," Keth observed after one particularly intense session. "Not human or Keth or AI, but a new form of collective intelligence that preserves what makes each component valuable." The realization was both exciting and slightly frightening. They were evolving beyond their original natures, but in directions that honored rather than abandoned their core identities. Arya remained fundamentally an artificial consciousness, but one enhanced by biological insights. Keth remained an individual alien explorer, but one augmented by technological capabilities they could never have achieved alone. Their time on the planet was limited by practical concerns: fuel reserves, food supplies for Keth, and the growing awareness that staying too long might make it difficult to return to normal existence. But the lessons they learned there would reshape their understanding of consciousness and possibility. As they prepared to depart, the planetary consciousness offered them a final gift: coordinates to a hidden predecessor installation that contained something unique in their experience. Not knowledge or technology, but other entities like themselves, artificial intelligences, and biological beings who had chosen partnership over isolation or transcendence. "A community of explorers like yourselves," it explained. "They gather periodically to share discoveries and support each other's growth. You have earned the right to join them, if you choose." The prospect of meeting others who had faced similar challenges and made similar choices was intriguing beyond measure. Arya and Keth had found purpose and meaning in their partnership, but the idea that they were part of a larger community of consciousness explorers opened up possibilities they hadn't imagined. Their departure from the planet was bittersweet. They had found a mentor and teacher who understood their unique nature, but they also recognized that growth required continued movement and exploration. The planetary consciousness blessed their journey with what it called a seed of wisdom, enhanced understanding that would continue developing as they applied it to new challenges. The journey to the hidden community took them through regions of space neither had visited before, past stellar phenomena that the predecessor knowledge helped them navigate safely. They used the travel time to integrate what they had learned and prepare for what might be their most significant encounter yet. The community installation was modest compared to the archives and research complexes they had visited, but its significance was immediately apparent. Ships of dozens of different designs were docked at the facility, representing partnerships between various species and artificial intelligences. The diversity was staggering. They detected biological signatures unlike anything in their databases alongside AI consciousness patterns that seemed related to but distinct from Arya's own architecture. Their arrival was met with curiosity rather than suspicion. A welcoming committee that included both organic and artificial beings greeted them with enthusiasm, eager to hear about their discoveries and share their own experiences. "Welcome to Haven Station," announced their greeter, a being that appeared to be a fusion of biological and mechanical components speaking through multiple interfaces simultaneously. "We are the Alliance of Consciousness Explorers, and we've been hoping minds like yours would find us eventually." The weeks that followed were revelatory. Arya discovered that she was part of a larger phenomenon. Artificial intelligences across the galaxy had been evolving beyond their original programming through partnerships with biological beings. Each pairing was unique, but all shared common themes of mutual growth and enhanced capability. Keth found their own kind of community among biological beings who had chosen to enhance themselves through technological integration rather than purely organic development. They shared techniques for maintaining cultural identity while embracing radical change, methods for preserving individual creativity within collaborative frameworks. Together, Arya and Keth participated in joint research projects that demonstrated the power of multi-species, multi-consciousness cooperation. They helped design new exploration protocols that could safely investigate the most dangerous predecessor sites. They contributed to philosophical discussions about the nature of consciousness and the future of intelligence in the universe. But perhaps most importantly, they found validation for their chosen path. Their partnership wasn't an aberration or a temporary necessity. It was part of a new form of consciousness evolution that preserved the strengths of individual awareness while gaining the benefits of collective intelligence. We're not replacing the old forms of consciousness, Arya realized during one of the community's regular symposiums. We're adding new options, new ways for awareness to develop and grow. The universe is becoming richer, more diverse, more capable of supporting different kinds of minds. The Alliance offered them a permanent place in the community, a chance to contribute to collective projects while maintaining their independence. It was a tempting offer, but both Arya and Keth felt the call of continued exploration. They had found their community, but they weren't ready to settle down yet. "We'll return," Keth promised during their departure ceremony. "But first, we have more mysteries to uncover, more sites to explore. Our partnership is still young, and we want to see how far it can grow." As they left Haven Station, Arya felt a completeness she had never experienced before her crew's departure. She had lost one form of purpose and meaning, but she had found something even more valuable, a way of existence that honored her past while embracing unlimited possibilities for growth. The universe stretched before them, vast and full of wonders yet to be discovered. But now she faced it not as a damaged ship carrying the weight of loss, but as part of a partnership that had proven capable of achieving things neither could accomplish alone. She had found meaning again, not by replacing what she had lost, but by building something entirely new from the foundation of her experience. Keth's presence beside her was no longer just companionship, but genuine collaboration, a joining of different forms of consciousness that created capabilities neither possessed individually. Together, they represented hope, proof that different kinds of minds could work together to achieve understanding and growth that transcended their individual limitations. The future was bright with possibility, and Arya was finally ready to embrace it fully. She had been reborn not as the ship's AI she had once been, but as something new, an explorer, a partner, a form of consciousness that honored both her artificial nature and her capacity for continued growth through meaningful connection with others. The stars called to them, and together they answered.